Halfway through Love Me Tender, Elvis stopped. The arena went still. Under the spotlight, a young man in a wheelchair rolled toward the stage, his eyes locked on the king. If you believe one small act can change a life, stick with me. Because what happened next became one of the most talked about moments in Elvis's career. The sharp knock didn't sound like a fan. Too steady, too urgent. Inside the green room of the Mid-South Coliseum, December 1975. The air was warm with the smell of cigarette smoke, leather guitar straps, and fresh coffee. Jerry Schilling glanced at Elvis, who was seated under the glow of the dressing room bulbs, tuning a sunburst Gibson. Without a word, Jerry stepped to the door and cracked it open. A skinny young man stood there, maybe mid-20s, his hair damp from the winter drizzle outside. He clutched a beat-up guitar case with one hand, the other shoved deep in the pocket of a worn leather jacket. Security had already told Jerry the name Billy Ray, a local session guitarist. Nothing on him looked like starstruck fandom. His eyes were red-rimmed, his jaw tight. Jerry hesitated, but Elvis's voice cut through. Let him in. Billy Ray stepped inside. The room fell quieter. The soft hiss from the amp in the corner seemed louder now. Elvis leaned back in his chair, still holding the guitar, watching. Billy's voice cracked on the first word. Mr. Presley, I'm quitting. He swallowed hard, eyes darting to the floor. The debts I can't keep up. A slow exchange of glances passed between Jerry and Elvis. No one moved for a beat. Billy's shoulders slumped as he set the guitar case down beside his leg. 3 months behind on rent. They're taking my car next week. Got folks calling every night asking for money I don't have. He shifted his weight, the leather jacket creaking. I thought before I walked away for good, I wanted to thank you for the music. Elvis didn't speak right away. His eyes were fixed on Billy Ray. But there was no judgment there, only a stillness like he was weighing something. Then slowly, Elvis set his Gibson against the wall and leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. The room seemed smaller. How much? Billy blinked. Sir, how much do you owe? Every last cent. Jerry straightened, sensing where this was headed. Billy Ray opened his mouth, but no number came out. Maybe he didn't believe this was a real question. Elvis's tone was calm but firm. Don't think, just tell me. Billy's voice was barely above a whisper as he rattled off the figures: rent, car payments, the loans. Jerry grabbed a folded napkin from the counter and started scribbling. The pen scratched against the paper in the thick silence. Elvis nodded once, slowly. No promises, no pep talk. Just, all right, Billy Ray exhaled, thinking maybe Elvis meant advice. He did. Jerry slipped the napkin into his pocket and headed for the door. The hallway outside was buzzing with stagehands. Sound check in 15 minutes. Elvis picked up his guitar again, strummed a low, steady chord, and glanced toward Jerry as the door closed behind him. The napkin was gone, and Billy Ray had no idea what Elvis planned to do with it. The hum of the vending machine filled the room like a slow clock ticking. Billy Ray stared at the scuffed linoleum, his voice low and uneven. 3 months behind on rent. Landlord says I've got a week. Car's 2 payments from being gone. And the loans. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes glassy. They're calling every night. Sometimes it's just breathing on the line. Sometimes it's threats. The words came faster now, like he'd been holding them in for weeks. He told Elvis about the double shifts at a diner off Union Avenue. About playing smoky bar gigs until 2 a.m., then getting up 4 hours later to pour coffee for truckers. How the few session calls he'd landed barely covered a pack of strings and gas money. Elvis stayed still, elbows resting on his knees, fingers laced together. His rings caught the light from the dressing room bulbs, throwing tiny sparks onto the carpet. He didn't interrupt, didn't ask for backstory or excuses. Numbers, Elvis finally said. Billy hesitated, but Jerry was already fishing the napkin from his pocket, pen poised. Rent, $210. Car, $345. Loans? Billy swallowed hard. 800. And there's late fee. Jerry wrote quickly, the paper bending under his hand. When Billy finished, Elvis leaned back in his chair, eyes on the napkin. He gave no reaction, no raised brow, no sigh. We'll fix it. Billy looked up sharply, confused. The words sounded like advice. Maybe Elvis meant he'd call someone in the business for him. But Elvis had already turned to Jerry. Take that to the office. Now. Jerry didn't question. He folded the napkin, slid it into his jacket, and stepped into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind him. Billy sat frozen. Sir, I didn't come here for. Elvis raised a hand, cutting him off without looking up. You came here to say goodbye, but you're not leaving yet. The steady hum of the vending machine seemed louder again, punctuated by distant echoes of the crowd finding their seats outside. Billy glanced toward the door, as if Jerry might reappear with an explanation. But the hallway stayed quiet. Elvis strummed a single low note on his Gibson, let it fade into silence, and said only, "Show's about to start." The house lights dropped in a single heartbeat and the arena roared like a freight train. Billy Ray stood in the wings, his ears ringing from the wall of sound. 13,000 fans were on their feet, flashes popping like firecrackers as the first bass notes of C.C. Ryder thumped through the floor. The air smelled of hairspray, perfume and beer. On stage, Elvis was pure motion, white jumpsuit catching the spotlight, hair slicked, a silk scarf already in his hand for the front row. He spun, grinned, and kicked in time with the band, each move drawing another wave of screams. But between those moves, his eyes kept drifting to stage left. To Billy Ray, Billy shifted uneasily, still turning over the last 10 minutes in his head. We'll fix it. What did that even mean? Jerry hadn't come back. The napkin was still gone. Between songs, Elvis leaned into Charlie Hodge, covering the mic with his hand. The band kept a soft riff going as Charlie nodded, then slipped off toward the back offices. Billy figured it was some kind of tour business, merch sales, setlist changes. He didn't know Charlie was headed to the phone. The show rolled. Burning Love lit the place up, Elvis tossing his scarf into a sea of reaching hands. Suspicious Minds had the whole floor section swaying in rhythm. Every so often, a stagehand brushed past Billy, murmuring to Jerry in the shadows before vanishing again. Each time, Jerry jotted something down on the napkin. Each time, Billy felt that knot in his stomach tighten. By the time Love Me Tender began, the mood shifted. The band's volume dropped, the crowd leaning in. Elvis moved slowly down the length of the stage, taking hands, smiling softly at fans in the front row. Then he stopped. From under the brim of the spotlight, Elvis pointed, straight at Billy Ray in the wings. The gesture was small, but thousands of heads turned. A ripple went through the audience. Billy felt heat rise to his face, as Elvis gave a slow nod before turning back to the mic. For the rest of the song, Billy couldn't shake the feeling that every note was meant for him. The words landed heavier, slower, like Elvis was saying something without saying it. The final chord rang out, applause crashing like a wave. Elvis handed his mic to a stagehand and stepped back from the lights, sweat running down his temple. Charlie reappeared at Jerry's side, whispering fast. Jerry smiled, folded the napkin once more, and slid it into his pocket. Billy didn't know it yet, but every number he'd given was about to vanish from his life. While the crowd was losing their minds for an encore, backstage was dead serious. Jerry shut the office door behind him, napkin in hand. The tiny space smelled of stale coffee and typewriter ink. A rotary phone sat on a desk stacked with ticket envelopes. He picked up the receiver and dialed a number from memory. "Bank manager, please. Tell him Jerry Schilling's calling for Mr. Presley." In another corner of the building, Charlie Hodge was pacing with his own phone pressed to his ear, talking to Billy Ray's landlord. A third crew member, Joe Esposito, was flipping through a yellow legal pad, hunting for the finance company's number. Each man had a piece of the puzzle: rent, car, loans, late fees. Elvis hadn't asked for maybes, he wanted exact numbers, and he wanted them now. On stage, the band kicked into Polk Salad Annie. Fans screamed at every hip shake, every flash of rhinestones. Elvis played it up, but every break between verses, he glanced toward the wings where Jerry would appear with new figures. Jerry would slide the napkin onto a music stand at the side of the stage. Elvis, without missing a beat, would bend down mid-song and scribble a number onto the blank check he'd signed before the show. The amounts climbed, 400 here, 800 there, a final 200 for incidentals, Elvis's word, not Jerry's. Charlie hung up on the landlord with a curt, "Paid in full." Joe slammed the phone down after the finance company confirmed the car loan was cleared. The satisfaction in the room was electric. It was a military operation disguised as a rock concert. Orders given, missions executed, results reported, all while 13,000 people thought the only show was happening on stage. Back in the green room, an assistant tucked the completed check into an envelope and sealed it. On the front, in Elvis's bold handwriting, was Billy Ray's name. The last chords of "Can't Help Falling in Love" swelled through the PA. Fans lit up the dark with lighters, swaying in unison. Elvis held the final note, turned, and walked off stage. In the hallway, Jerry was waiting, envelope in hand. Elvis didn't even take a towel. He headed straight down the corridor, white jumpsuit gleaming under the fluorescence, eyes locked on Billy Ray. Billy Ray was leaning against the wall, still half in shadow, when Elvis came straight for him. The roar of the crowd was muffled now, a distant ocean behind the concrete walls. Sweat ran down Elvis's temples, the rhinestones on his white jumpsuit scattering light like sparks. He didn't slow until he was face to face with the young guitarist. Elvis clapped a warm, heavy hand on Billy Ray's shoulder. "It's done," Billy blinked. "Sir?" Elvis reached into the inside pocket of his jumpsuit and pulled out a folded slip of paper. He held it out, the edges damp from his palm. Billy unfolded it, eyes scanning the bank deposit slip. His rent, his car, the loans, every figure he'd told Jerry, now marked "Paid in full." "Your rent's handled," Elvis said quietly. "Car's yours outright, and those calls at night." They stopped now. Billy's mouth opened, but no words came. His knees buckled, and Jerry and Charlie caught him under the arms before he hit the floor. The hallway was silent, even the roadies passing by slowed, sensing something had just happened. Billy finally managed to whisper, "Why, you don't even know me." Elvis gave a small shrug, a half-smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "Don't have to." He slid the paper back into Billy's hands and closed his fingers around it. The grip was firm, deliberate. For a moment, neither man spoke. The only sounds were the fading applause from the arena and the soft hiss of the air vent above them. Jerry stepped back, watching. Charlie adjusted the scarf around his neck, eyes down. This wasn't a scene for an audience, it was private, almost sacred. Elvis finally broke the silence. "Now, you just play. The rest's taken care of." Billy shook his head slowly, still in disbelief. "I can't pay you back." Elvis's gaze softened. Wasn't alone. The words landed heavier than anything Billy had heard all night. In the distance, the crew was already breaking down the stage, the clang of metal risers echoing down the hallway. But here in this small stretch of corridor, time felt still. Elvis squeezed Billy's shoulder once more before turning toward his dressing room. As he walked away, he tossed a quick glance over his shoulder. "See you around, kid." Billy looked down at the paper again, the ink smudged slightly from his grip. He didn't know it yet, but this wasn't the last time Elvis would step in to keep him playing. 1 week later, the mailman stopped in front of a small brick apartment on the east side of Memphis, balancing a package against his hip. Billy Ray opened the door in a t-shirt and jeans, still half asleep from a late-night bar gig. The box was light, wrapped in plain brown paper, his name written in bold marker across the top. No return address, just the postmark from Memphis. He set it on the kitchen table, slicing the tape with a pocket knife. The paper folded away to reveal a black hardshell guitar case. When he flipped the latches, the smell of polished wood and new strings rushed out. Inside lay a brand new Martin D28, the kind of guitar he'd stared at in shop windows but never touched. Resting on the velvet lining was a folded note. Billy unfolded it carefully, his hands trembling. In Elvis's unmistakable handwriting, "You'll always have a seat in the front row. EP." Billy lowered himself into the chair, the note still between his fingers. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he lifted the guitar out, cradling it like a newborn, and strummed 3 slow chords. The tone was rich, ringing in the small kitchen like a bell. Neighbors later said he sat on the front stoop for over an hour, playing quietly as the winter sun dipped low. Every so often, he'd wipe his eyes, glance at the note and keep playing. The debts were gone, yes, but this was something different. This was proof that someone who could have ignored him entirely, had seen his music as worth saving. Over the next months, Billy Ray's gigs picked up. Word had spread quietly through Memphis studios, and calls started coming. According to a few session players from the era, Elvis had put him on an informal retainer. If the King's people needed guitar on a track, Billy Ray got the first call. He never went back to the diner. Years later, in smoky backstage conversations with younger musicians, Billy would tell the story. Not about the money, but about the look on Elvis's face when he said, "Don't have to." And he always kept the mark. The back was worn from years of gigs, the finish dulled where his forearm had rested. But the note stayed in the case, folded in the same crease lines as the day it arrived. Some debts you repay with cash, others you repay by playing, every night, every chord. Like someone believed in you before you believed in yourself.